covering the stories that impact your life, your town, your state, and your future. This is the Means Report with your host, Brad Means.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Means Report. We certainly appreciate you spending part of your day with us, where I cannot believe it's that time of year again. Time for our giving edition. You know, typically we tackle the headlines, the hard-hitting topics, but today we're going to make things hopefully lighter and hopefully light a spark within you to donate to these great nonprofits in our town. Our late executive producer and director, Marlena Wilson, launched this giving edition right around Thanksgiving every year. Child Enrichment is here, Hope House is here, and the Tuttle Newton Home is here. You're going to learn about these great agencies, beginning with Child Enrichment. Let's get right to it. Carrie Viola Brook is the executive director. She's no stranger to the Means Report, and you've probably seen her in the community, very active indeed on behalf of Child Enrichment. Carrie, thanks for coming back.
Thanks so much for having me, Brad.
Let me just try to, for the viewers' benefit as well as mine, tell you what I think Child Enrichment is. Y'all are a place where you help children go through the legal system if they've been abused or neglected, kind of holding their hand through their case. Is that right?
Yeah, so and kind of beyond the legal system, we also help with that healing process. So we help with free trauma counseling to kids and their families after they've experienced abuse, neglect, or child sex trafficking.
How do they find you? Do parents and kids walk up to your door?
Yeah, so we have two main programs that work with children. So one is our CASA program, Court-Appointed Special Advocates. And those kids come through us through our juvenile courts in the three different judicial circuits we work with. So if a kid comes into foster care, the judge often would appoint a CASA to the case, and that CASA advocates for that child's best interest and to get permanency. Our other program is our Child Advocacy Center, and written into the child abuse protocols, law enforcement and the Department of Family and Children's Services have to bring kids to Child Enrichment for a forensic interview when there's an allegation of abuse. So that's kind of how people start with us.
How common is this problem? Some of us live in a bubble and we hear you talk about child abuse and say, oh, that can't be happening in our community. How prevalent?
Yeah, so last year we served 1,203 children.
Oh.
You know, your segment is 30 minutes long, and we know that every 30 minutes there's a confirmed case of child abuse in the state of Georgia. So while this is going on, we will have at least one case of child abuse happening.
Carrie, I know we could spend the rest of the broadcast talking about this, but how do you conduct those interviews without re-victimizing the child?
Yeah, so that's the whole process of why we want kids to come to Child Enrichment. We have a beautiful new building, so kids can come to a safe place to talk, and our staff are trained in child development. They're trained in how to ask non-leading, non-suggestive questions, and we don't work for law enforcement or DFACS or the DA's office. So we really focus on the child's best interests, so we don't cause any more harm to the child, but provide them a safe place to talk about what they've unfortunately experienced.
And then is what they say admissible in court?
Yeah, so there's a child hearsay exception. So the forensic interviews that kids do, we're able to testify in court, and those interviews are able to be shown. We just testified in a trial last week, and the interviews were done in 2018. That is a long time ago.
Wow.
So can you imagine a 3-year-old who is interviewed, and then now 6 years later, they have to go and testify? That's going to be hard for anybody to do and scary. So it's really important that those forensic interviews are able to be shown, and our staff is able to explain to the jury the dynamics of child abuse.
Do y'all house the children and keep them away from the bad people?
So we don't anymore. A lot of people know Child Enrichment as the old shelter. So we started in 1978 as the shelter. And then in the early 2000s, most shelters across the country closed down, and we kind of moved away from that in the child welfare world. So now what we do is we help DFACS find safe places that kids can be, and then we advocate for that permanency. We want either them to be reunited back home with their families, if that's appropriate, or going forward with adoption.
Who's being mean to these children? Primarily family members?
Yeah, so we know statistically 80% of kids are abused by somebody they and their family know and trust. We should still teach stranger danger and things like that, but we also need to be teaching kids that anybody can make you feel uncomfortable, and if they do, you need to tell somebody, and it's okay to say, like, I don't want to do that.
Do schools help you? Could a teacher call Child Enrichment and say, I'm noticing some things with my student?
Yeah, and that's a great thing you bring up, Brad. A huge effort we've made over the past years in our prevention efforts. So we work with schools, we work with mandated reporters on how to recognize signs of abuse and what to do. We often get calls from our school personnel that we work with, other therapists in the community of, hey, I've noticed some of these red flags, what do I do? We walk those adults through the proper process because it can be intimidating for everybody. We work with this every day, and we want to make sure that the proper steps are taken for kids to be safe.
What should we look for? What are some red flags?
Yeah, so obviously if you're an adult that works with kids, recognize any changes in their behavior, build those strong relationships with them so that if they were ever in a situation that didn't feel comfortable or they felt unsafe, they could come to you. The biggest thing too is if a kid does ever disclose to you that something's not okay happening at home, believe them and take steps to make sure that they're safe. So call DFACS, make that report to 1-855-GEORGIA-CHILD because we are adults and we need to be the ones that step up to protect children.
1-855-GEORGIA-CHILD. I know Jared will put that on the screen for us. What about the overall reporting of abuse? And maybe this is an unanswerable question, but do you think it's underreported?
Yes, it's extremely underreported.
How can people hide it?
Yeah, so we're working in this kind of phenomenon where kids are told to keep these things a secret. Mm-hmm. And especially child sexual abuse does not happen out in the public in front of people. So there's a lot of threats that go along with child abuse. So kids oftentimes don't tell. So we need to make sure we're educating them on body safety. Just like we tell kids they shouldn't hit each other, they shouldn't kick each other, we need to be telling them these are your private parts. It's not okay for anybody to touch you there. If they do, it's okay to tell me. Even if this person tells you it's not okay. We need to be having those conversations and educating kids because they don't know.
Last question, how can we help you? What can the community do to help Child Enrichment do this wonderful work better?
Yeah, so there's so many things. Obviously, we're here on a giving segment, so donate to us.
Please.
All of our services are free. We don't charge families after a horrible situation has happened to help them heal. So that, but also get educated. Find out more on our website about the important work we do. Go to some of our trainings to educate yourself on how to prevent child abuse for the kids you work with and love. And then just spread awareness. We work in a field where people don't want to talk about it. It's a taboo subject, and we need people to kind of be brave enough to talk about it.
Carrie, thank you and your team for what you do. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Carrie Villabrook, Executive Director of Child Enrichment. Please remember them. Carrie is passionate about what she does, and so is everybody there. Wonderful, beautiful work with our sweet children. When we come back, we continue our giving edition of the Means Report with a look at Hope House and how they help break the cycle of addiction.